So in this chart, we are going to discuss about the drawing steps of Grant sensible heat factor line. That means how this line can be drawn on a psychometry chart. So before starting, we have drawn a rough sketch of psychometry chart, the x-axis of which is represented by dry bulb temperature, while the y-axis is represented by W, that is specific humidity in kilogram per kilogram of dry air, while one more scale is showing the value of sensible heat factor. As we already know that we have find out the value of Grant sensible heat factor is just represented in equation number 1. We have find out the value of Gshf. So using this value of Gshf, we are marking a point small a on SHF scale showing the value of GSHF. After marking this point number A, we are marking the next point, that is point number B. This point number B is already discussed. This is the alignment circle point. And this alignment circle point is having the standard value of 26 degrees centigrade dry bulb temperature and 50% relative humidity, as already discussed in session number 1 for room sensible heat factor. So after drawing or marking point number B, we are joining these 2 points by a straight line A to B. After joining this line, we are to mark 3 points represented by point number 1, point number 2 and point number 3. What these 3 points are representing, the point number 1 is representing outside air condition or atmospheric air condition, while the point 2 is representing room air condition, while the point number 3 is representing mixing air condition. Point number 1 will always be given in the numerical because this is the condition of atmosphere, always a standard value, while the point number 2, that is room condition, will always be given in the numerical because this room air condition is the condition of air which is required by the operator of air conditioner, while point number 3, that is what, mixing point. This mixing point will be provided or will be available by mixing of outside air with recirculated air. That means when recirculated air will be mixed with outside air, then this condition will provide us point number 3, that is mixing air condition point. First of all, before starting, I am just drawing point number 1. Let's suppose this point number 1 is the outside air condition point. Now after point number 1, we are drawing point number 2. Let's suppose this point number 2 is the room condition point. Previously this room condition point was represented by capital R, that means desired condition of the room air in RSHF scale. Now join point number A to point number B through a straight line. We are joining point number 1 to 2 through a straight line, and point number 3, that is what, mixing point, will lie in between this point number 1 and 2, but where it will lie, this is not clear. This will be dependent on the percentage amount of outside air taking place in mixing with recirculated air. Now let's suppose 50% of recirculated air is mixed with 50% of the fresh air. Point number 1 is providing the fresh air, while the point number 2 is providing the recirculated air. If both air are mixing in the same amount, that means 50-50%, in that case we will get the point number 3 at the center of line 1 and 2. And if the percentage is varying, let's suppose by 40 or 60, 30 or 70%, then the point number 3 or line number 1 to 2 will also be divided in the same ratio, that means 30:70 or 40:60, whatever will the percentage of fresh air and recirculated air. Now for this particular condition, I have assumed 50% of fresh air is mixing with 50% of recirculated air. That's why the point number 3 is at the center of line number 1 and 2. What we are to do to draw this point, we are just to take the total length of line number 1 and 2 on the psychometric chart and just divide this line by 2. That means we will get the center of line 1 and 2 represented by point number 3. Now from point number 2 we are to do RSHF line, as we have discussed in session number 1. Parallel to line AB, we are to draw a line starting from point number 2. Parallel to line AB, we are to draw a line starting from point number 2, and the point where this line will intersect at the saturation curve, we are marking this point as point number 5. Parallel to line AB, we have drawn a line that is 2 to 5, and this point 5 is marked on the saturation curve, and this line is known as RSHF line, which we have discussed previously in our first session. Now from point number 3, that is our mixing point, we are to draw another line, and which line will intersect at saturation curve represented by our another point, that is ADP. This ADP is apparatus dew point temperature. This is point number 6 represented by ADP, and this ADP is known as apparatus dew point temperature. Usually this point is given in the numerical. So we are joining this line from 3 to 6 by a straight line, and we have represented this point by point number 6. You can see when line 3 to 6 is intersecting with 2 to 5, we are getting one more new point, and this point will be represented by point number 4. When line 3 to 6 is getting intersected by line number 2 to 5, we are getting a new point, that is point number 4, and this point number 4 in our figure is known as the supply point. This point number 4 in our figure is known as the supply point. So this point number 4 will be the point when air is coming out from the air conditioning apparatus. I am just repeating the terms. The point number 1 was our outside air condition point, the point number 2 was our room condition point, and after mixing of air from point number 1 and point number 2, we were getting a new point, that is point number 3, which was known as the mixing air condition point, and point number 3 was joined by point number 6, that was apparatus dew point temperature, and point number 2 was joined by point number 5, which was intersection point of saturation curve showing RSHF line. And at the intersection of these two lines, we have got a new point. That point is represented by point number 4, and this point number 4 is known as the supply point. That means supply point of the conditioned air to the room. That means from point number 4, air is supplied to the room, and this air is known as the conditioned air. That's why this is called supply point. And you can see we have got a new line, that is line from 3 to 4, and this line from 3 to 4 is known as the GSHF line. That means we have got finally grand sensible heat factor line for which we are having this session. So finally the line from 3 to 4 can be represented by GSHF line. I'm marking this line here. Line number 3 to 4 is represented by GSHF line, and at the same time we have got a new line, that is line number 2 to 5, and this line is known as RSHF line. That means room sensible heat factor line. And in such a way, these are the basic drawing steps through which we can draw GSHF and RSHF line.